Hi, I'm Aditya. I'm a PhD student at the Indian Institute of Science, working with Professor Himanshu Tyagi. In this lecture, I'm going to present some methods to obtain information theoretic lower bounds for problems in statistics. So there is a series of lectures on information theory by Professor Tyagi, some 61 videos. It's available on YouTube. And in one of those lectures, video number 40 to be specific, he spent some time discussing this topic. So this lecture is an elaboration on that. This is just to place this lecture in context so that if you want to brush up on concepts we use here, you can refer to those lectures. But if you're comfortable with things like hypothesis testing, total variation distance, scale divergence, you should be okay. Okay, so let's start by discussing the kind of statistical problems we are going to deal with, which is that of statistical estimation. So in statistical estimation, we are given a family of probability distributions, which is denoted by this calligraphic P, and these are probability distributions on some measurable set X. We are also given a function theta, which takes a distribution from calligraphic P and assigns to it an element from the big theta, which is called the parameter space. So now the statistical estimation problem is the following. Given n identically distributed and independent samples from P, this P is unknown. The only thing you know about P is that it comes from this calligraphic P. Okay, based on these samples, we want to estimate the parameter associated with P, which is theta P. Okay, in other words, we want to construct an estimator. So your estimator theta hat is a function that takes n elements from X, calligraphic X, and assigns to it an element from parameter space big theta. So for instance, consider the Gaussian mean estimation problem. So here calligraphic P are all the d-dimensional Gaussian distributions with identity covariance matrix. So theta is the function that maps a Gaussian distribution to its mean. Okay, so and now we want to construct an estimator, the mean estimator theta hat, which takes n elements from Rd and assigns to it an element from Rd again. So here Rd is also big theta. Okay. So for instance, a natural estimator is look at those n elements and just take their empirical mean. Okay. So now the problem is how to measure goodness of an estimator. We want to assign a number to an estimator that is a measure of its goodness or badness. So towards this, we define something called a loss function, L. So L takes two elements from the parameter space and maps it to a non-negative number, L theta comma theta dash, which basically measures how far theta is from theta dash. And once we have this loss function, we can now define something called the risk of an estimator. So the risk of an estimator theta hat at P is the expected loss between what you estimate, what is estimated by theta hat, and what is the actual parameter, which is theta P. So for instance, for the Gaussian mean estimation problem, we could have a loss function which is the square root of Euclidean distance. Okay, so in this case, the risk you assign to an estimator theta hat at P is the mean squared error between what you estimate and what is the actual parameter. Okay, so now corresponding to each estimator, we have a whole bunch of numbers. It's basically a function, the risk function, that assigns a risk for each distribution. Okay, so now to judge an estimator, we want a single number to judge it by. And so we look at its worst case risk. Okay, so given an estimator, compute its risk for every P and take the maximum risk. So that is what we call the worst case risk of estimator theta hat. Okay, so now that we have a number for each estimator, the important question is what is the best we can do for a given statistical estimation problem. So this is captured by this quantity Rn star, which is the minimum worst case risk over all estimators. Okay, so Rn theta hat is the worst case risk of the estimator theta hat, and you want to find the minimum over all theta hats, over all estimators theta hat. Okay, so and what is the worst case risks? It's the maximum over all the risk corresponding to distribution P. And again, we can expand the risk as this expected loss between what you estimate and what is the actual value, actual parameter. Okay, so now this Rn star is called the minimax risk. Okay, so note that this minimax risk, this doesn't depend on any particular estimator. This is a problem specific quantity. So it depends only on calligraphic P, the family of distributions, the theta, which is the parameter function, and the loss function L. Okay, it says something about the difficulty of the problem. If Rn star is big, it means that no matter which estimator you choose, you will have a big worst case loss. Right? So since this quantity Rn star captures the difficulty of a problem, we want to characterize Rn star. Right? We want to obtain upper bounds and lower bounds on Rn star. We want to nail it down. So to get an upper bound is relatively easy. You can just pick any estimator and find its worst case risk. Okay, this will be an upper bound because Rn star can be thought of as the performance of the best estimator. So any estimator you take, its worst case risk Rn theta hat would be at least Rn star. So there is an upper bound for Rn star corresponding to every theta hat. Okay, so for example, let's look at the Gaussian mean estimation and let's see what the worst case risk is for the empirical mean estimator. So here the loss function is the squared error loss, that your loss is more than delta, is at most Rn theta hat by delta. Right? This is because you have this upper bound of Rn theta hat on your expected value. Our estimator is the empirical mean estimator. So now the mean squared error of theta hat applied to P when the samples are actually coming from P is as follows. We have to compute the squared L2 distance between theta hat and theta P. And we break it into dimensions. We do it coordinate wise. And now for the jth coordinate, the empirical estimator would be the estimate of the jth coordinate of the actual theta. Okay, and since this turns out to be an unbiased estimate, this quantity is just the variance of say x1j by n. And the variance is 1, and so if you add over all the d coordinates, you get d by n. Okay, note that this is independent of P. So the risk of theta hat for every P is d by n. So its worst case risk would also be d by n. So now this is one particular estimator, and its worst case risk is d by n. So we can conclude that Rn star, which is the minimax risk, is at most d by n. Okay, so now what about the lower bound? So the lower bound will say something like Rn star is at least something. Okay, and we call this the information theoretic lower bound on Rn star. It basically says that no matter what estimator you use, you cannot do better than Rn star, or you cannot do better than whatever the lower bound you have. Okay, so it is regardless of everything. And there is no computational limitation, no memory limitation. You can use any estimator you want. And the lower bound in Rn star will say that no matter what estimator you use, you will incur at least this much risk in the worst case. Okay, so in some sense, there is a limit to how much information samples carry about the parameter theta. So that is why we call it the information theoretic lower bound. Okay, so suppose in the Gaussian mean estimation problem, we show that Rn star is at least 1 by 16 d by n. Suppose we can show this. We'll later see that this is indeed the case. So for any estimator theta hat, the worst case mean squared error is at least 1 by 16 d by n. Right? So we can say that empirical mean estimator is optimal up to constants. We saw that the empirical mean estimator has this risk of d by n, And now the lower bound says that you have to be at least 1 by 16 d by n. So we are nearly optimal with the mean with the empirical mean estimator. So in this lecture, our goal is to study methods to obtain lower bounds for Rn star. Okay. So let's see how we do this. Okay, so how to obtain minimax lower bounds on Rn star. So basically we will show that for an arbitrary estimator theta hat, Rn star is at least Fn. So Fn is some function of n. Okay, n is the number of samples, recall. And Fn is independent of theta hat. Okay, so now if you have a theta hat independent quantity as a lower bound for Rn theta hat, it would mean that it holds for all theta hats, all estimators. So which would basically imply that Rn star, your minimax risk, is at least f of n, right? So let's see how we do this. So fix an arbitrary estimator theta hat, okay? And now we will look at the worst case risk of theta hat and show that it's at least some quantity which is independent of theta hat. Okay, so now the risk of theta hat at p would be at most this Rn theta hat. Rn theta hat is the worst case risk, right? So now the idea is as follows. We set up a hypothesis testing problem. Okay, so for instance, from this family of distributions P, we choose two distributions P1 and P2. Okay, and so J indexes these two distributions. So J is selected uniformly at random from 1, 2. Okay, and now we observe n samples from Pj. The goal is to output J hat. So J hat is the estimate of J. We don't know J, we just see the samples from x1 to xn. We know that J can be either 1 or 2. We know what P1 and P2 are. And based on these samples, we want to estimate J hat. Okay, so now what we do is we use our estimator for solving this hypothesis testing problem. So how we do that is we compute theta hat xn. So we have this estimator theta hat. We compute theta hat of xn. Okay, and now we look at this L theta hat xn to theta 1 and L theta hat xn comma theta 2. Okay, so L theta hat xn comma theta 1 is, it basically says how far is your theta hat from theta 1. L theta hat comma theta 2 will say how far your theta hat is from theta 2. Okay, if L theta hat theta 1 is bigger, you estimate J hat as 2 because you're closer to 2, right? And if L theta hat theta 1 is smaller, you estimate J hat to be 1. So basically you're solving this hypothesis testing problem using your estimator. Okay, in the figure we see that suppose J is 2, so we are observing samples from P2. Okay, so in this case, suppose our estimator is this theta hat and it's close to theta 2, so we will output theta 2. Okay, so now since we have some kind of guarantee on the worst case loss of theta hat, we can upper bound this probability of error. Okay, so P error theta hat is the probability of error for this hypothesis testing problem when you use theta hat for solving your hypothesis testing. Okay, so based on the fact that your worst case risk is Rn theta hat, you can derive an expression for this probability of error. Okay, so now we now use fundamental results on hypothesis testing that say that probability of error should be at least something for any test. Right, for any test, the probability of error is at least something. So for the binary hypothesis testing problem between P0 and P1, or it should actually be between P1 and P2, right? We know that the probability of error is at least this half 1 minus total variation distance between P1 and P2, no matter what test you use. So now if your worst case risk Rn theta hat, if it's too small, the probability of error you get when you use your estimator to solve this hypothesis testing problem will violate the fundamental limit, right? So Rn theta hat cannot be very small because it has to obey this fundamental limit. And so this basically gives a lower bound on Rn theta hat, that you cannot be too small, otherwise you'll violate this fundamental limit. So it should be at least something. So this will give a lower bound on Rn theta hat. Because of this fundamental limit, this lower bound would be independent of theta hat. Okay, so now let's do this more formally. So our goal is to do the following. For an arbitrary theta hat, we want to obtain a lower bound on Rn theta hat. Okay, that is independent of theta hat. So okay, so let's do this. So Rn theta hat is the maximum expected loss over all p's, right? So for any given p, your expected loss, which is risk, would be at most Rn theta hat. Okay, so this is okay. And now we use Markov's inequality to obtain a probabilistic statement. So the above statement is for expectations, and now we reduce it to a probability statement, that the probability that the loss function, that your loss is more than delta, is at most Rn theta hat by delta, right? This is because you have this upper bound of Rn theta hat on your expected value. Okay, so just using Markov, you get this statement. Okay, and this holds for all p's and all deltas. Okay, so we can choose arbitrary delta greater than 0 here in the Markov inequality, and we can choose arbitrary p, and it holds for every p. Okay, so now let us choose P1 to Pm, m distributions from this family P. Okay, so since this Markov inequality we have derived holds for every P, what we have is the following. So 1 by m P1. So this loss function between theta hat and theta 1. Okay, this is upper bounded by Rn theta hat by delta. Okay, why is this? Because it holds for every, it holds for P1, it holds for P2, it holds for Pm. And so if you take the average of all those, it will still hold this upper bound of Rn theta hat by delta. So what we have shown is, so that is, we have Rn theta hat is at least delta times this quantity. Right, and okay, let's call this star. Okay, so now the main idea of this whole derivation. So what is the main idea? Is to view this as probability of error for an Emery hypothesis testing problem. Or for an Emery hypothesis testing algorithm, right? So we'll construct an Emery hypothesis testing problem, and we will construct an algorithm to solve that hypothesis testing problem, and we'll show that we can view this quantity as the probability of error for that hypothesis testing problem. Okay, so again we have this picture here. So we have m distributions which we have chosen from P. As of now, they are arbitrary. And corresponding to each distribution, we have the parameters in the parameter space. Okay. And okay, so suppose we choose P1 to Pm so that the loss between theta j and theta j dash is at least 2 delta. Okay, so if j and j dash are different. So, okay, and also suppose that this loss function satisfies triangle inequality. Okay, then what happens is, if theta hat is delta close to theta j, right? If the distance, when I say distance, I mean this loss function, in terms of this loss function. So so the distance between theta hat and theta j, if it's less than delta for some j, then it will be at least delta for every other j. So basically what this means is that in the diagram, you can be inside only one of these balls. Right? If you are inside one of these balls, you cannot be inside of any other ball. Right? Okay. So now consider the following hypothesis testing problem. J is sampled uniformly from 1 to m. We observe n samples from Pj, and based on these samples, we want to output j hat, which is the estimate of j. Right? So we are given P1 to Pm. We know what P1 to Pm are. And one of them is selected at random. We are given samples from it, and we want to output which distribution the sample is coming from. So now for this hypothesis testing problem, this is an M-ary hypothesis testing problem, since you want to select one out of m alternatives. We consider the following testing algorithm. And this testing algorithm is based on our estimator. So we compute theta hat of xn. We can do this. And if there exists some j, which is delta close to theta hat, we declare that j as our answer to the hypothesis testing problem. Okay, so if theta hat lies in any of these balls, we will output the corresponding j. Okay, so now it could also be the case that your theta hat falls outside somewhere here, not in any of these balls. So in that case, just output j hat as 1. Okay. So now let's compute the probability of error of this algorithm. So probability of error for this for this algorithm based on theta hat. So this is 1 minus probability of being correct. Okay. Now, what is the probability of being correct? So if j is actually small j, in that case you are guaranteed to be correct if theta hat of xn is close to theta j, right? Is delta close to theta j. So if this happens, if this event happens, you're guaranteed to be correct. And since we are interested in the average probability of error, we'll just average this over all j's. Okay, so your probability of correctness is at least this. So your probability of error is one minus this, and we can, which is basically the probability that you are away from theta j. It's greater than equal to delta. Okay. So now observe that this is this right hand side of this equation star we had. Right. So we wanted to view this as a probability of error, and we can indeed view this as a probability of error, conditioned on these two assumptions, that your theta j's or p1 to pm's are chosen in such a way that in terms of loss function they are at least 2 delta apart, and that L theta satisfies triangle inequality. Okay. Okay, so we have shown that this quantity here is at least, it's an upper bound on the probability of error. Okay, so now if you substitute this in star, we get this, that Rn theta hat is at least delta times this probability of error. Okay, so now note that this still depends on theta, hat. So we have a lower bound on Rn theta hat, but it still depends on theta hat. Okay, so now we will show that this quantity has to be at least something, and that would be a fundamental limit that holds for any test. Right, and since it holds for any test, so this is how we get rid of theta hat dependence. Right. Okay, so now here we use results from information theory. So fundamental limits for hypothesis testing. If you have a binary hypothesis testing problem, the probability of error would be at least 1 minus total variation distance between P1 and P2. And we have this P1 power n, P2 power n because we are observing n samples. Okay. And if m is more than 2, in that case, we have something called Fano's inequality, which says that probability of error is at least 1 minus this quantity, which is called the mutual information between xn, the samples, and the j, the index, plus 1 by log m. So m is the number of hypotheses. Okay, and we can show that. Okay, so let me define what this quantity in I is. So let this p bar n be defined as this average probability distribution. So this is basically the mixture of this product distributions p1 to pm. Okay, in this case, so then this quantity mutual information is the average distance, where distance is the scale divergence between those pj's and this average distribution. Okay, so we can show that you can bound this upper bound, this I, by this pairwise maximum divergence between pj to the power n and pj dash to the power n. Okay, you can use convexity of the KL divergence to get this result. So if you want more information on this, you can refer to lectures by Professor Tyagi. Okay, so suppose m is more than 2 in our case. So in that case, right, we can just lower bound this probability of error using Fano's inequality. And substituting this in the above expression, we get that Rn theta hat is at least this quantity delta into this fundamental probability of error. Okay, and now note that there is no theta hat dependence on the right hand side. So we have obtained a lower bound on Rn theta hat, which is independent of any specific theta hat. Okay, and this is what we actually wanted. So now note this lower bound holds for every delta greater than 0. It will hold for any p1 to pm, such that the L of theta j and theta j hat is at least 2 delta. Right. So conditioned on this assumption here, you can choose any p1 to pm and choose any delta. So basically what we get is that Rn star. So since this the bound we have obtained holds for every theta hat, if we minimize over theta hat, we get this Rn star. So Rn star would be at least the maximum over all deltas and all p1 to pm, which are at least 2 delta separated. Okay, in this loss function sense. So and of this quantity. So this is the Fano's lower bound on Rn star. So we have been able to obtain a lower bound on the minimax error, minimax risk, right? Using this hypothesis testing problem. So we use our estimator to solve to solve a hypothesis testing problem, and we use fundamental results about hypothesis testing problem to show that your risk cannot be too small. Okay, so let's do a sanity check on what we have obtained. So this says that Rn star is big if delta is big, d is small, the KL divergence, and log m is big. So in these cases, your Rn star would be big. So now we want to see if this makes sense. So if log m is big, it means there are many probability distributions, okay, which you want to distinguish amongst. D is being small, it means that those distributions are actually close. So D being small, it means that it's very difficult to distinguish them based on the samples, right? And delta big, it means that even though these distributions are actually close, in the parameter space they are far apart, right? And this closeness is the actual closeness. This imposes a fundamental limit. If they are close, you cannot distinguish them very well, and even for these close distributions, you have big delta. So you're bound to make a lot of error in your estimation, because you won't be able to distinguish between P1 to PM, and but in the delta, in the parameter space, they are far apart. So in this case, you will have large loss. So this makes sense. The expression we have obtained here for Rn star, the Fano's expression. Okay, so now we can do a similar thing for m equals 2. M equals 2 means you just set up a binary hypothesis testing problem and solve it using your estimator. In that case, this thing is the fundamental limit on the probability of error, and so we obtain this lower bound, which is known as Lacam's lower bound. Okay, so the only difference between Lacam and Fano is for multiple hypothesis testing problem, MRE hypothesis testing problem, where m is at least 2 or more than 2, and Lacam is for when m is 2, so you solve a binary hypothesis testing problem. Okay, so let's see what lower bounds we get for the Gaussian mean estimation problem with mean squared error risk. Okay, so let's do Lacam first. Let's solve the binary hypothesis testing problem. So if P1 is normal distribution with mean θ1 and P2 is normal distribution with mean θ2, you can compute that the distance between P1n and P2n, the KL divergence between them, is equal to this thing. So you can just directly compute them, and you can use the fact that dP1n P2n is equal to n times dP1 and P2. Okay, so this is a special property of the KL divergence, and right, and dP1 divergence between P1 and P2 can be shown to be this. This is basically the square of the Euclidean distance. Okay, and now we can use Pinsker's inequality to obtain an upper bound on the total variation distance, right? So Pinsker's inequality, it basically says that the total variation distance is at most half times the KL divergence, right? So if you apply this to the expression for the KL divergence, we obtain this upper bound on the total variation distance. Okay, so now we can use Lacam's lower bound. So Lacam's lower bound says that your Rn star is greater than or equal to, okay, we have this delta square here because we are looking at mean squared error, and this holds for any P1 and P2, so that θ1 minus θ2, the L2 distance between them, is at least 2 delta. So okay, so we choose P1 comma P2 such that their mean squared distance, so their square distance, squared Euclidean distance, is 4 delta square. Okay, so here basically we are choosing P1 and P2 so that this is exactly 2 delta. Okay, so in this case, the total variation distance between P1n and P2n is at most root n delta. Okay, so if we just substitute it here, we get that Rn star is greater than or equal to this quantity, and we can still optimize over delta. Okay, we can choose any delta we want basically. So okay, so we will choose delta to make this constant, say half. Okay, so we'll choose delta so that this expression inside the parenthesis is half, right? So if we choose, say, delta equals 1 by 2 root n, right? So in this case, the expression inside this parenthesis becomes half, and what we get is Rn star okay. So now we have a lower bound now. So okay, so what earlier we had derived an upper bound on Rn star, so which was this d by n, and this is achieved by the empirical mean. And now we say that no matter what estimator you design, your worst case risk would be above 1 by 16n, so it will lie in this shaded gray area, right? So okay, so earlier all we could have claimed was that Rn star is greater than 0 or greater than or equal to 0, right? And now we have a non-trivial lower bound using Lacampe's method, which says that your Rn star is at least 1 by 16n, so your worst case risk falls as 1 by n, right, basically, because your empirical mean achieves this d by n, and your Lacampe lower bound says that it's 1 by n. But there is no dependence on d here, right? And this is because we solve this very simple hypothesis, binary hypothesis testing problem, to obtain a lower bound. So now we use Fano's method to see if we can get a better bound here. Right, so Fano's method, again, instead of this 1 minus dTv by 2, we have this 1 minus this maximum KL divergence plus 1 by log m. So this is using Fano's inequality. Right, again we have this delta square, and it holds for all P1 to Pm such that theta j minus theta j hat, the L2 distance between them is at least 2 delta. Okay, so this derivation was done in Professor Tyagi's lecture number 40. So I'll just give an outline of how this construction was done. By construction I mean how these P1 to Pms were chosen, right? So let B4 delta be the ball of radius 4 delta in Rd, say centered around 0. Okay, so now we will choose P1 to Pm such that all the thetas lie inside this ball of radius 4 delta. Okay, and we also want to ensure that the L2 distance between the thetas is at least 2 delta. So okay, so we will apply a greedy procedure to do this. So once we are in this ball, okay, we choose some theta 1. Now take this ball of radius 2 delta around it, right, and choose any point outside this ball and call that point theta 2, right? So this constraint that theta 2 should at least be 2 delta far from theta 1 is satisfied. So now take theta 2, again consider this ball of radius 2 delta around theta 2, okay, and now choose theta 3, which is outside both the balls around theta 1 and theta 2. So theta 3 would be far from both theta 1 and theta 2 by at least 2 delta. Okay, and again take this ball around theta 3 and choose theta 4 and so on. Okay, so this is called packing. You want to pack as many points inside this ball of radius 4 delta as possible, such that distance between any two points is at least 2 delta. Okay, and since the volume of the big ball is some constant, d-dependent constant, times the radius to the power d, right? And here the radius is 4 delta, and the volume of the small ball is again that same constant times 2 delta to the power d. You can pack roughly these many balls inside this big ball. Okay, and this comes out to be 2 power d. So your log m can be made at least d, or some constant times d. Okay, so why consider this ball of radius 4 delta? I mean, the larger ball you take, the more number of the smaller balls you can pack inside it, which will lead to larger m, more number of hypotheses, which means your lower bound is better. But the constraint to keep the ball small comes from the fact that the maximum KL divergence in the Fano's bound between Pj and Pj dash should be small. Okay, if you want a good bound, and the KL divergence between Pj and Pj dash is basically the L2 distance squared between theta j and theta j dash. So if you want to keep this maximum KL divergence small, we want to keep the maximum distance between thetas small as well. Okay, and so this is basically the reason why we choose this ball of radius 4 delta and then pack the smaller ball of radius 2 delta inside it. Right, so now we compute okay, so now what would be the maximum KL divergence between P and J and P and J dash? Okay, so KL divergence between P and J and P and J dash is just n times KL divergence between Pj and Pj dash, right? And so, okay, KL divergence between Pj and Pj dash is just the L2 norm squared by 2, and the maximum L2 norm square can be 8 delta, right? So I think this should be 8 delta square by 2, right? This can be the maximum KL divergence, and so this turns out to be 32 n delta square. Okay, so now we substitute this in Fano's bound. So the maximum KL divergence is 32 n delta square. Okay, and okay, so now we will choose delta to make this this term inside constant, right? So choose delta to make this say 1 by 4. Okay, so which means we want it to be greater than or equal to 1 by 4. Okay, so which means we want this 32 n delta square plus 1 by d to be less than 3 by 4, right? And 3 by 4 can be written as 1 by 2 plus 1 by 4, right? And so this 1 by d factor here, right, this would be less than 1 by 2 if d is greater than or equal to 2. And so all we want is 32 n delta square by d is less than or equal to 1 by 4, right, which gives delta as less than or equal to root d by n one by root 128. Okay, right, so now substitute or set delta to be equal to this, okay, to get Rn star is at least, so we have this delta squared here, so we have 1 by 128 d by n into 1 by 4, so it's basically d by 128 into 4 n, and this is valid for any d greater than or equal to 2, right? So now note that we have the almost optimal bound here, because the upper bound we already know it to be d by n, and we have this constant factor here which says that Rn star should be at least this for Gaussian mean estimation problem under mean squared error. Okay, and note that the dependence on dimension came because of this packing argument, right? We packed this ball of radius 4 delta using the smaller balls of radius 2 delta, Okay, and that really brings out the dependence on dimension. We'll just note this fact here. Dependence on D because of packing. Okay, so now let's go to another method to prove lower bounds, which is known as Aswat's method. So before discussing Aswat's method, let's recap Fano's method. Okay, so basically what we did in Fano's method was that we created this family of distributions, right, P1 to Pm. Now we specify this P1 to Pm and we select one of these distributions at random, generate L samples from it, and then output J hat, which is the estimate of J. Okay, using our estimator. Okay, and if our estimator is too good, or if Rn star is too small, we will break the fundamental limit of hypothesis testing, and so which gives a lower bound on Rn star. Okay, so one thing to mention here is that there is no special relationship between J and Pj. Right? What I mean is, there was this big ball of radius 4 delta, and we packed it with smaller balls. Right? And this corresponded to, say, P1. Let's say this corresponded to P4, P3, P2, right? But it's not the case that if the indices are closed, then the balls are also closed. You could have named them anyhow, right? Okay, so this is to bring it in contrast to Aswat's method. So in Aswat's method, again, it's based on this hypothesis testing method. So we create a family of distributions, a finite family, right? And we label each distribution using this plus minus 1 vector of dimension m. Right? We are free to choose this m. So the total number of hypotheses, right, is 2 power m. Okay. So okay, and we create this family in such a way that this L, okay, so this should be theta z and theta z dash, right? So the distance between theta z and theta z dash in terms of L is at least delta times the Hamming distance between z and z dash for some constant delta. Okay, so basically what it means is that if z and z dash are far apart in Hamming distance, right, this is the Hamming distance, so this is the number of coordinates at which z and z dash differ. So if this distance is large, then the loss is also large. Okay, so we'll see how this helps. Okay, so now we have the usual thing where we generate z uniformly from among these 2 power m hypotheses. Okay, and we can do that by choosing each of these coordinates z1 to zm uniformly at random, plus minus 1. Okay, so now once we have z, we output x1 to xn, n samples from it, IID from pz, and based on these samples, we will output a z hat using our estimator theta hat. Okay, so now the thing is this: if your estimator is good, your z hat would be close to z, right? And this is because of this dependence between the Hamming distance between z and this loss function. So if your loss is small, your Hamming distance cannot be too big, right? So if you are close to, if the theta hat you output, right, is close to your original hypothesis, then in that case you are sure that your z and z dash agree on many coordinates, right? So and this is basically the main feature of a Schwarz construction. So this additional structure allows us to upper bound error probabilities in estimating ZIs. Right? So in Fano's method, if your hypothesis is close to the original hypothesis, suppose you are in the neighboring ball, right? So since the indexing can be arbitrary, it's not necessarily the case that if you take the bit representation of your original ball and the neighboring ball, they are close. It's not necessary. But in Aswar's construction, um, this dependence of loss function on Hamming distance between z and z dash, it guarantees that if you are close in L, it means your Hamming distance has to be, your Hamming distance cannot be too large. So basically you can test m different binary hypotheses, is the essence of it, right? Instead of solving one multiple hypothesis testing problem, you have like m binary hypothesis testing problem that you can solve because of this additional structure. So let's do it more formally. So Rn theta hat is the worst case risk of theta hat, and so for every z, the expected the risk with respect to the risk of theta hat for pz is at most Rn theta hat. Okay, so what is our goal now? We want to relate Rn theta hat to the probability of error of some hypothesis testing problem, and as we discussed, we will want to relate it to this testing problem of testing each of the bits of z. Okay, so right, so for that, so once you have an estimator, given n samples, you can compute theta hat of xn and then output the closest z hat, right? So so if in the diagram, if you have these distributions from the family and their corresponding parameters, right? And if your theta hat falls here, just output the parameter 1 0. So your estimate for z would be 1 1 0. Okay, so here 0 is for -1, right? So 1 -1. Okay, so to relate Rn theta hat to the probability of error in hypothesis testing problem, let's try to bound this expected distance between theta z hat and theta z when we assume that the samples are coming from pz. Okay, so so first we can use triangle inequality, right? So we have some guarantees for this, for loss between theta hat and theta z. So to exploit that, we introduce this theta hat. Okay, so this is just by triangle inequality. So we needed L to follow triangle inequality even in our earlier derivation for Fano's method. Okay, so now observe that this quantity is smaller than this quantity, right? Because the way z hat was defined is z hat for which theta z hat is closest to theta hat, right? So this thing would be smaller than the other one, and so we get that this is less than equal to right, and we have an upper bound for this, which is the worst case risk Rn theta hat. Okay, so we want to relate r and theta hat with probability of error for some hypothesis testing. So let's rewrite this. R and theta hat is greater than equal to, this is just rewriting what we have already derived. Okay, so now in Fano's inequality, the way we brought the probabilistic statement was by using Markov's inequality, right? But here the probabilistic statement comes more naturally, and this is because we now use the fact that this L here, right, between theta z hat and theta z is greater than equal to delta times I equals 1 to m. Okay, so this is because by construction, right? This is the property of Oswald's construction, and this turns out to be delta by 2. At expectation of indicator function is just probability. So okay, so now we have something. We have a probabilistic statement, right? And this holds for all z. So since it holds for all z, we get, so we'll do a similar thing we did in Fano's, where something holds for all the distributions, so it will hold for average of those distributions. Okay, so r and theta hat is greater than equal to delta by 2, I equals 1 to m, so this is the same as above. And now we replace this pz with the average distribution. So average over all z's. Okay, and there are 2 power m possible z's. Zi, okay. Right, so let us rewrite this thing here. Let's break this z into 2 sets. All the z's for which the ith coordinate is 1 plus 1, right? And we write the same thing. And since the ith coordinate is 1, we can just write 1 here. Okay, plus all the z's for which the ith coordinate is minus 1. Okay, so we have this, right? So now how does this relate to testing whether zi hat is plus 1 or minus 1? So for this, consider the following, right? Fix some I in 1 to m, and think of the following binary hypothesis testing problem. Z1 to Zm are chosen IID uniformly from minus 1 comma 1. So this is as before. Okay, and once we have Z1 to Zm, we basically have Z. So now observe these n samples IID from Pz. And based on these observations, just output Z hat of I. What is your estimate for Zi based on these samples, right? So if you have this binary hypothesis testing problem, what would be the probability of error if you try to solve it using your estimator? Okay, so right. So probability of error in the ith bit, right, when we are using our estimator to solve this hypothesis testing problem, is half. So this is the probability of Zi being 1, right? In this case, what is the probability that Zi hat is not 1? Plus half, again, which is probability of Zi being minus 1. And in this case, what is the probability that your Z hat I is not minus 1? Okay, so this is the probability of error. And now if you compute this, right? So this is just some calculations of conditional probability. Everything is discrete here, so no problems, right? So if you just compute this, it would be z, so the zi equals 1 pzn and similarly this would be, we now sum over all the z where zi is minus 1. Okay, so this is by calculation of conditional probability. So okay, so now we'll call this distribution here p plus I to the power n. Okay, so this is basically this mixture distribution. Right, so this is p plus I to the power n, and similarly call this distribution here p minus I to the power n. Okay, so now, okay, so thus notice that this expression we derived here, this, like, right, is the same as this expression here, right, except that you have 2 power m minus 1 here, but when this is multiplied by this extra half, you'll get 1 by 2 power m, right? So this is exactly the same thing as this. Okay, so we basically get that Rn theta hat is greater than equal to delta by 2 I equals 1 to m probability of error in the ith bit. Okay, it is still theta hat dependent, and so now to remove the dependence on theta hat we use the fundamental limit, and for binary hypothesis testing problem we have this fundamental limit in terms of total variation distance, and we use it for each I, so we sum over all the i's, right? So each probability of error would be lower bounded by this quantity. Okay, p plus I n and p minus I n, right? Right, and p plus I n is just this distribution, p minus I n is this distribution. Okay. Right, and so right, this is the fundamental limit, which holds for each I. Right, so instead of applying Fano's inequality, which lower bounds probability of error for multiple hypothesis testing problem, here you have multiple binary hypothesis testing problem, and so you use this total variation bound for each binary hypothesis testing problem. Okay, and you could reduce it to binary hypothesis testing problem because you have a guarantee on what is the probability of error for each bit, right? And this guarantee here comes because of the fact that because of the structure of the loss function where distance between theta z and theta z dash is directly proportional to the Hamming distance between z and z dash. Okay, so that is the basic idea in the Schwarz method. Okay, so now this holds for all deltas, it holds for all pz's such that this condition of separation holds. Okay, and again this bound we obtained was independent of theta hat, so if you take infimum you get Rn star here. So this is just this bound, right? Okay, so this looks a bit complicated, so let's simplify it. Just like in Fano's we had this mutual information and we wrote it in terms of maximum KL divergence, so let's try to simplify this as well. Okay, so the total variation distance between p plus I n and p minus I n. So we just substitute the definition of these quantities. Okay, and now you can show that this is at most 1 over 2 power m minus 1 z such that zi equals 1, the total variation distance between pz and pz with the ith bit flipped. Okay, so this is the notation for that. Okay, z with ith bit flipped, right? So okay, so how do you get this? So one way to say this is using the supremum definition of total variation distance, right? So let's take a simpler example. So the total variation distance between, say, p1 plus p2 by 2 and q1 plus q2 by 2, right? This is just supremum over all events, p1a plus p2a by 2 minus q1a plus q2a by 2. Okay, you can take half outside and you can separate the supremum, right? So you can have supremum p1a minus q1a right, and so when you separate the supremum, so you can make this quantity larger, and so what you get is something larger. Okay, so this is basically the argument for this. Okay, and now you can just replace it by the maximum possible, just like we did for KL divergence in Fano's inequality, right? So I will just continue here. So this is less than equal to right. So if you replace each term here in the above expression using this and sum over all z such as zi equals 1, so the possible number of summends is 2 power m minus 1, which cancels this 2 power m minus 1. Okay, so you finally get this expression. Okay, so if we substitute this simplified thing in the sword bound we obtained, we get this maximum over all delta, maximum over all families, which satisfies this Hamming separation. Okay, Rn star is at least delta by 2 to m. So this m results from the fact that you have summation I equals 1 to m. Okay, and this has been lower bounded by the same number for all m quantities, which is this. Okay, right. So we'll call this the SOR lower bound. Okay. Right. So now let's see how it applies to Gaussian mean estimation with mean squared error risk. Okay, so first you want to specify the family of distributions, right? And the way we specify this is as follows. Pz would be normal with mean delta z and covariance matrix ID. So z here is a d-dimensional plus minus 1 vector. Okay, so z here is a vector and delta is a scalar here. Okay, so now in this case we want to see if it satisfies that Hamming separation property. So this loss function here, which is the mean squared loss, if you compute this for z and z dash, we get this is equal to 4 delta squared and the Hamming distance. Right, so this is easy to see. Whenever zi and zi dash match, that particular coordinate will become 0. And if they do not match, if they differ, then that particular coordinate will either become 2 delta or minus 2 delta. And so when you square it, it would be 4 delta squared. Okay. Okay, so now we, so the quantity we need to upper bound here is this total variation between z and the flipped version of z, where only the ith bit is flipped. Okay, so if we just flip the ith bit, okay, so this is just Pinsker's inequality. And now when we flip the ith bit, so this would be exactly root n by 2 into 2 delta, right, which is root n delta, because there is only one bit which is flipping here. Okay, and this holds for all z and i's. So we can use this bound for this maximum maximum KL divergence, maximum total variation distance. Okay, so now if we just substitute here, we get that Rn star is at least maximum over delta 4 delta square d by 2. Okay, so d is m in this Aswad bound. Okay, and then 1 minus root n delta by 2. Okay, so choose delta as 1 by 2 root n to make it half, the term inside the parenthesis half. Okay, so setting delta equals 1 by 2 root n, we get Rn star is at least d by 8n. Okay, so note that we have this dependence on d here, right, the optimal dependence on d. Okay, so let's compare Fano and Aswad's method. So in Fano's method, the dimension of the parameter space, it entered the lower bound via packing argument. Okay, and the construction was more general and abstract. So in general, once you have a construction, once you have some distributions, a finite set of distributions, you can apply Fano's inequality to obtain a lower bound. Okay, you can always do that. So even if you have a construction which satisfies Aswad's property, but right, you can still apply Fano's argument there and get a lower bound. Aswad's method gives a more direct way of bringing in dimension of the parameter space, even though the construction requires more structure, right? So it's more special, but even then such hypercube constructions, right, where we index by this plus minus 1 vector and satisfying this Hamming property, such hypercube constructions can be obtained in many scenarios. Right, so and this is especially helpful in non-parametric situations. So for example, instead of trying to estimate a finite dimensional parameter, you could have a problem where based on n samples you want to estimate the density function of the underlying distribution. So in that case, your parameter space is a function class, right? So in those situations, it's easier to use Aswad's method to obtain lower bounds. And if you want to see examples of that, you can refer to this paper, Aswad, Fano, and Lakam by Professor Bin Yu. In this paper, you can also look at comparisons between these methods. So this is all I have to say. Thank you.